Each life is born, reproduces itself, dies, and is absorbed. The maintenance of health and life itself depends upon the constant regeneration of these cells. It is therefore apparent that there is mind in every atom of the body. This mind is negative mind, and the power of the individual to think makes him positive, so that he can control this negative mind. This is the scientific explanation for metaphysical healing, and will enable anyone to understand the principle upon which this remarkable phenomenon rests. This negative mind, which is contained in every cell of the body, has been called the subconscious mind because it acts without our conscious knowledge. We have found that this subconscious mind is responsive to the will of the conscious mind. All things have their origin in mind, and appearances are the result of thought, so that we see that things in themselves have no origin, permanency, or reality, since they are produced by thought. They can be erased by thought. In mental, as in natural science, experiments are being made, and each discovery lifts man one step higher toward this possible goal. We find that every man is the reflection of the thought he has entertained during his lifetime. This is stamped on his face, his form, his character, his environment. Back of every effect there is a cause, and if we follow the trail to his starting point, we shall find the creative principle out of which he grew. Proofs of this are now so complete that this truth is generally accepted. The objective world is controlled by an unseen and heretofore unexplainable power. We have heretofore personalized this power and call it God. We have now, however, learned to look upon it as the permeating essence or principle of all that exists, the infinite or universal mind. The universal mind, being infinite and omnipotent, has unlimited resources at its command, and when we remember that it is also omnipresent, we cannot escape the conclusion that we must be an expression or manifestation of that mind. A recognition and understanding of the resources of the subconscious mind will indicate... Amore, vieni, mettiti qui, c'è lo spazio. A recognition and understanding of the resources of the subconscious mind will indicate that the only difference between the subconscious and universal is one of degree. They differ only as a drop of water differs from the ocean. They are the same in kind and quality. The difference is one of degree only. Can you appreciate the value of this all-important fact? Do you realize that a recognition of this tremendous fact places you in touch with omnipotence? The subconscious mind, being the connecting link between the universal mind and the conscious mind, is it not evident that the conscious mind can consciously suggest thoughts which the subconscious mind will put into action, and as the subconscious is one with the universal, is it not evident that no limit can be placed upon its activities? A scientific understanding of this principle will explain the wonderful results which are secured through the power of prayer. The results which are secured in this way are not brought about by any special dispensations of providence, but, on the contrary, they are the result of the operation of a perfectly natural law. There is therefore nothing either religious or mysterious about it. Yet there are many who are not ready to enter into discipline necessary to think correctly, even though it is evident that wrong thinking has brought failure. Thought is the only reality, conditions are but the outward manifestations. As the thought changes, all outward or material conditions must change in order to be harmony with their creator, which is thought. But the thought must be clear-cut, steady, fixed, definite, unchangeable. You cannot take one step forward and two steps backward. Neither can you spend 20 or 30 years of your life building up negative conditions as the result of negative thoughts, and then expect to see them all melt away as the result of 15 or 20 minutes of right thinking. If you enter into the discipline necessary to bring about a radical change in your life, you must do so deliberately after giving the matter careful thought and full consideration, and then you must allow nothing to interfere your decision. This discipline, this change of thought, this mental attitude will not only bring you the material things which are necessary for your highest and best welfare, but will bring health and harmonious conditions generally. If you wish harmonious conditions in your life, you must develop a harmonious mental attitude. Your world without will be a reflection of your world within. For your exercise this week, concentrate on harmony, and when I say concentrate, I mean all that the word implies. Concentrate so deeply, so earnestly, that you will be conscious of nothing but harmony. Remember, we learn by doing. Reading these lessons will get you nowhere. It is in the practical application that the value consists. Learn to keep the door shut, keep out of your mind and out of your world element that they are not helpful. Part 15. Be ready. We have even a film. I'm seeing which filter is better. Maybe this one. Part 15. Experiments which parasites found on plants indicate that even the lowest order of life is enabled to take advantage of natural law. This experiment was made by Jacques Locke. I don't know French, so the name maybe is not perfect. A member of the Rockefeller Institute. In order to obtain the material, potted rose bushes are brought into a room and placed in front of a closed window. If the plants are allowed to dry out, the aphids, parasites, previously wingless, change to winged insects. After the metamorphosis, the animals leave the plants, fly to the window, and then creep upwards on the glass. It is evident that these tiny insects found that the plants on which they have been thriving were dead, and that they could therefore secure nothing more to eat and drink from the source. The only method by which they could save themselves from starvation was to grow temporary wings and fly, which they did. Experiments such as this indicates that omniscience as well as omnipotence is omnipresent, and that the tiniest living thing can take advantage of it in an emergency. Part 15 will tell you more about the law under which we live. He will explain that these laws operate to our advantage, that all conditions and experiences that come to us are for our benefit, that we gain strength in proportion to the effort expended, and that our happiness is best attained through a conscious cooperation with natural laws. Fili, qui in mezzo. We look perfect. Vieni, amore. So, the laws under which we live are designed solely for our advantage. These laws are immutable and we cannot escape from their operation. All the great eternal forces act in solemn silence, but it is in our power to place ourselves in harmony with them and thus express a life of comparative peace and happiness. Difficulties, inharmonies, and obstacles indicate that we are either refusing to give out what we no longer need or refusing to accept what we require. Growth is attained through an exchange of the old for the new, of the good for the better. It is a conditional or reciprocal action. For each of us is a complete thought entity, and this completeness makes it possible for us to receive only as we give. We cannot obtain what we lack if we not tenaciously cling. We are able to consciously control our conditions as we come to sense the purpose of what we attract, and are able to extract from each experience only what we require for our further growth. Our ability to do this determines the degree of harmony or happiness we attain. The ability to appropriate what we require for our growth continually increases as we reach higher plans and broader visions, and the greater our abilities to know what we require, the more certain we shall be to discern its presence, to attract it and to absorb it. Nothing may reach us except what is necessary for our growth. All conditions and experiences that come to us do so for our benefit. These difficulties and obstacles will continue to come until we absorb their wisdom and gather from them the essential of further growth. That we reap what we sow is mathematically exact. We gain permanent strength exactly to the extent of the effort required to overcome difficulties. The inexorable requirements of growth demand that we exert the greatest degree of attraction for what is perfectly in accord with us. Our highest happiness will be best attained through our understanding of and conscious cooperation with natural laws. In order to possess vitality, thought must be impregnated with love. Love is a product of the emotions. It is therefore essential that the emotions be controlled and guided by the intellect and reason. It is love which imparts vitality to thought and thus enables it to germinate. The law of attraction, or the law of love, for they are one and the same, will bring to it the necessary material for its growth and maturity. The first form which thought will find is language, or words. This determines the importance of words. They are the first manifestation of thought. The vessels in which thought is carried. They take hold of the ether and by setting it in motion reproduce the thought to others in the form of sound. Thought may lead to action of any kind, but whatever the action, it is simply the thought attempting to express itself in visible form. It is evident, therefore, that if we wish desirable conditions, we can afford to entertain all the desirable thoughts. This leads to the inevitable conclusion that if we wish to express abundance in our lives, we can afford to think abundance only. And as words are only thoughts taking form, we must be especially careful to use nothing but constructive and harmonious language, which, when finally crystallized into objective forms, will prove to our advantage. We cannot escape from the pictures we incessantly photograph on the mind, and this photography of erroneous conceptions is exactly what is being done by the use of words. when we use any form of language which is not identified with our welfare. We manifest more and more life as our thought becomes clarified and takes higher plans. This is obtained with greater facility as we use word pictures that are clearly defined and relieved of the conceptions attached to them on lower planes of thought. It is with words that we must express our thoughts, and if we are to make wait and if we are to make use of higher forms of truth, we may use only such material as has been carefully and intelligently selected with this purpose in view. This wonderful power of clothing thoughts in the form of words is what differentiates man from the rest of the animal kingdom. By the use of the written word, he has been enabled to look back over the centuries and see the stirring scenes by which he has come into his present inheritance. He has been enabled to come into communion with the greatest writers and thinkers of all time, and the combined record which we possess today is therefore the expression of universal thought as he has been seeking to take form in the mind of man. We know that universal thought has for its goal the creation of form, and we know that the individual thought is likewise forever attempting to express itself in form, and we know that the word is a thought form, and the sentence is a combination of thought forms. Therefore, if we wish our ideal to be beautiful or strong, we must see that the words out of which this temple will eventually be created are exact, that they are put together carefully, because accuracy in building words and sentences is the highest form of architecture in civilization and is a passport to success. Words Words are thoughts and are therefore an invisible and invincible power which will finally objectify themselves in the form they are given. Words may become mental places that will live forever, or they may become shacks with the first breeze will carry away. They may delight the eye as well as the ear. They may contain all knowledge. In them we find the history of the past as well as the hope of the future. They are living messengers from which every human and superhuman activity is born. The beauty of the word consists in the beauty of the thought. The power of the word consists in the power of the thought, and the power of the thought consists in its vitality. I so much love this word. The beauty of the word consists in the beauty of the thought. Wait. I'm laughing for this image. Okay. The power of the word consists, How shall we identify a vital thought? What are its distinguishing characteristics? It must have principle. How shall we identify principle? There is a principle of mathematics, but none of error. There is a principle of health, but none of disease. There is a principle of truth, but none of dishonesty. There is a principle of light, but none of darkness. And there is a principle of abundance, but none of poverty. How shall we know that this is true? Because if we apply the principle of mathematics correctly, we shall be certain of our results. Where there is health, there will be no disease. If we know the truth, we cannot be deceived by error. If we let in light, there can be no darkness. And when there is abundance, there can be no poverty. These are self-evident facts, but the all-important truth that a thought containing principle is vital and therefore contains life and consequently takes root and eventually, but surely and certainly displaces the negative thoughts which by their very nature contain no vitality, is one which but this is a fact which will enable you to destroy every manner of discord, lack and limitation. There can be no question but that he who is wise enough to understand will readily recognize that the creative power of thought places an invincible weapon in his hands and makes him a master of destiny. In the physical world, there is a law of compensation, which is that the appearance of a given amount of energy anywhere means the disappearance of the same amount somewhere else. And so we find that we can get only what we give. If we pledge ourselves to a certain action, we must be prepared to assume the responsibility for the development of that action. The subconscious cannot reason. It takes us at our word. We have asked for something, we are now to receive it. We have made our bed, we are now to lie in it. The die has been cast. The threads will carry out the pattern we have made. For this reason, insight must be exercised so that the thought which we entertain contains no mental, moral, or physical germ which we do not wish objectified in our lives. Insight is a faculty of the mind, whereby we are enabled to examine facts and conditions at long range. A kind of human telescope. It enables us to understand the difficulties as well as the possibilities in any undertaking. Insight enables us to be prepared for the obstacles which we shall meet. We can therefore overcome them before they have any opportunity of causing difficulty. Insight enables us to plan to advantage and turn our thought and attention in the right direction, instead of into channels which can yield no possible return. Insight is therefore Insight is therefore absolutely essential for the development of any great achievement, but with it we may enter, explore and possess any mental field. Insight is a product of the world within and is developed in the silence by concentration. For your exercise this week, concentrate on insight. Take your accustomed position and focus the thought on the fact that to have a knowledge of the creative power of thought does not mean to possess the art of thinking. Let the thought dwell on the fact that knowledge does not apply itself, that our actions are not governed by knowledge but by custom, precedent and habit, that the only way we can get ourselves to apply knowledge is by a determined conscious effort. Call to mind the fact that knowledge unused passes from the mind, that the value of the information is in the application of the principle. Continue this line of thought until you gain sufficient insight to formulate a definite program for applying this principle to your own particular problem. Think truly, and thy thoughts shall the words famine feed. Speak truly, and each word of thine shall be a fruitful seed. Live truly, and thy life shall be a great and noble creed. little rest. I still need to put the chickens inside, now I do it. Feeling. Ready? Let's go. Part 16. The vibratory activities of the planetary universe are governed by a law of periodicity. Everything that lives has periods of birth, growth, fruitage. These periods are governed by the septimal law. The law of sevens governs the days of the week, the phases of the moon, the harmonies of sound, light, heat, electricity, magnetism, atomic structure. It governs the life of individuals and of nations, and it dominates the activities of the commercial world. Life is growth, and growth is change. Each 7 years period takes us into a new cycle. The first 7 years is the period of infancy, the next seven the period of childhood, representing the beginning of individual responsibility. The next seven represents the period of adolescence. The fourth period marks the attainment of full growth. The fifth is the constructive period, when men begin to acquire property, possessions, a home and family. The next, from 35 to 42, is a period of reactions and changes, and this in turn is followed by a period of reconstruction, adjustment and recuperation, so as to be ready for a new cycle of sevens, beginning with the 50th year. There are many who think that the world is just about to pass out of the sixth period. That is, that it will soon enter into the seventh period, the period of readjustment, reconstruction, and harmony, the period which is frequently referred to as the millennium. Those familiar with these cycles will not be disturbed when things seem to go wrong, but can apply the principle outlined in these lessons with the full assurance that a higher law will invariably control all other laws, and that through an understanding and conscious operation of spiritual laws, we can convert every seeming difficulty into a blessing. I would like to show you Buffy, and this is just kissing Philip. So you know what? We will advance us to put us with them. Because they are really down there. We'll have to advance a little bit. Buffy is in love with Philip. So we make our advancement. So you can see even the kids. There you go. It looks cozier. Ma Fili! Ma povera Puffy! Puffy, mettiti a modino. Dai, poverina Puffy. Bravi, Puffa. Guarda, ti dai bacini, amore. Via Mosca. Ok. Wealth is a product of labor. Capital is an effect, not a cause, a servant, not master, a means, not an end. The most commonly accepted definition of wealth is that it consists of useful and agreeable things which possess exchange value. It is this exchange value which is the predominant characteristic of wealth. When we consider the small addition made by wealth to the happiness of the possessor, we find that the true value consists not in its utility but in its exchange. This exchange value makes it a medium for securing the things of real value, whereby our ideals may be realized. Wealth should then never be desired as an end, but simply as a means of accomplishing an end. Success is contingent upon a higher ideal than the mere accumulation of riches, and he who aspires to such success must formulate an ideal for which he is willing to strive. Prentice Mulford said, I have yet heard his name. The man of success is the man possessed of the greatest spiritual understanding, and every great fortune comes of superior and truly spiritual power. Unfortunately, there are those who fail to recognize this power. They forget that Andrew Carnegie mother had to help support the family when they came to America. That Harriman's father was a poor clergyman with a salary of only $200 a year. That Sir Thomas Lipton started with only 25 cents. This man had no other power to depend upon, but it did not fail them. The power to create depends entirely upon spiritual power. There are three steps: idealization, visualization, and materialization. Every captain of industry depends upon this power exclusively. In an article in Everybody's Magazine, Henry Flagler, the Standard Oil multimillionaire, admitted that the secret of his success was his power to see a thing in its completeness. The following conversation with the reporter shows his power of idealization, concentration, and visualizations. All spiritual powers. Did you actually vision to yourself the whole thing? I mean, did you or could you really close your eyes and see the tracks and the trains running and hear the whistles blowing? Did you go as far as that? Yes. How clearly? Very clearly. Here we have a vision of the law. We see cause and effect. We see that thought necessarily precedes and determines action. If we are wise, we shall come into a realization of the tremendous fact that no arbitrary condition can exist for a moment, and that human experience is the result of an orderly and harmonious sequence. The successful businessman is more often than not an idealist and is ever striving for higher and higher standards. The subtle forces of thought, as they crystallize in our daily moods, is what constitutes life. Thought is the plastic material with which we build images of our growing conception of life. Use determines its existence. As in all other things, our ability to recognize it and use it properly is the necessary condition for attainment. Premature wealth is but a forerunner of humiliation and disaster, I don't think, because we cannot permanently retain anything which we do not merit or which we have not earned. This is not true. I don't think that is true. The condition with which we meet in the world without correspond to the conditions which we find in the world within. This is brought about by the law of attraction. How then shall we determine what is to enter into the world within? And about the previous center, because it depends even by the life that the authors lives. Because many believe, and for many well is the truth, that if you are yet born rich, you will not struggle like to arrive to a certain point. But this is really not true, because maybe you will expand even more your life, because since you don't start from a place of necessity, many they just lose their time and that's it. But if at the basis you have even values, a family of values, you will try to search for life something that really gives happiness, and so even to yourself, uh, instead of just finding something that gives you, yes, wealth, normal wealth. So I guess that if you are born rich and with some values at the basis, so that you don't need just to, for example, work for survival, you will expand even more, because your expansion will be due to uh, you're willing to obtain something more, even more, and not just the basic of living, you know. So, but well, this just comes from experience, because maybe sometimes that someone that is born in struggle, they can understand this, you know. They just think that if you are yet born rich, then you will don't not do anything because you don't think to be in need to do anything. This just depends by the basics. There are many that indeed they are born in rich families that since they have time, you know, many they become great philosophers. I guess even Nietzsche, that he heredited like a great fortune, so he had a lot of time and he just taught. He was not just going around like doing nothing. He was implying Einstein good. So it's the same as saying, for example, if someone is poor and then he just does random working, then let's suppose that he wins some money, a big lottery, then it's the same. He will just let things to enjoy those money. So you have to have the values at the basis. Not it's not about how you are born. So whatever enters the mind through the senses or the objective mind will impress the mind and result in a mental image, which will become a pattern for the creative energies. These experiences are largely the result of environment, chance, past thinking, and other forms of negative thought, and must be subjected to careful analysis before being entertained. On the other hand, we can form our own mental images through our interior processes of thought, regardless of the thoughts of others, regardless of exterior conditions, regardless of environment of every kind, and it is by the exercise of this power that we can control our own destiny, body, mind, and soul. It is by the exercise of this power that we take our fate out of the hands of chance and consciously make for ourselves the experiences which we desire, because when we consciously realize a condition, that condition will eventually manifest in our lives. It is therefore evident that in the last analysis, thinking is the one great cause in life. Therefore, to control thought is to control circumstances, conditions, environment, and destiny. How then are we to control thought? What is the process? To think is to create a thought, but the result of the thought will depend upon its form, its quality, and its vitality. The form will depend upon the mental images from which it emanates. This will depend upon the depth of the impression, the predominance of the idea, the clarity of the vision, the boldness of the image. The quality depends upon its substance, and this depends upon the material of which the mind is composed. If this material has been woven from thoughts of vigor, strength, courage, determination, the thought will possess these qualities. And finally, the vitality depends upon the feeling with which the thought is impregnated. If the thought is constructive, it will possess vitality. It will have life, it will grow, develop, expand, it will be creative, it will attract to itself everything necessary for its complete development. If the thought is destructive, it will have within itself the germ of its own dissolution. It will die, but in the process of dying, it will bring sickness, disease, and every other form of discord. This we call evil, and when we bring it upon ourselves, some of us are disposed to attribute our difficulties to a supreme being, but this supreme being is simply mind in equilibrium. It is neither good nor bad, it simply is. Wait, I want to make a picture on this. And could you ask after to see if you hear the music that I'm hearing too? Because I put it really low so that there are not the copyright infringement. Okay. Our ability to differentiate it into form is our ability to manifest good or evil. Good and evil, therefore, are not entities, they are simply words which we use to indicate the result of our actions, and these actions are in turn predetermined by the character of our thought. If our thought is constructive and harmonious, we manifest good. If it is destructive and discordant, we manifest evil. If you desire to visualize a different environment, the process is simply to hold the ideal in mind until your vision has been made real. Give no thought to persons, places, or things. These have no place in the absolute. The environment you desire will contain everything necessary. The right persons and the right things will come at the right time and in the right place. It is sometimes not planned how character, ability, attainment, achievement, environment, and destiny can be controlled through power of visualization, but this is an exact scientific fact. You will readily see that what we think determines the quality of mind, and that the quality of mind in turn determines our ability and mental capacity. And you can readily understand that the improvement in our ability will naturally be followed by increase in attainment and a greater control of circumstances. It will thus be seen that Natural laws work in a perfectly natural and harmonious manner. Everything seems to just happen. If you want any evidence of this fact, simply compare results of your efforts in your own life. When your actions were prompted by high ideals and when you had selfish or ulterior motives in mind, you will need no further evidence. If you wish to bring about the realization of any desire from a mental picture of such in your mind, by consciously visualizing your desire, in this way you will be compelling suches. You will be externalizing your life by scientific methods. We can only see what already exists in the objective world, but what we visualize already exists in the spiritual world, and this visualization is a substantial token of what will one day appear in the objective world, if we are faithful to our ideal. The reason for this is not difficult. Visualization is a form of imagination. This process of thinking form impressions in our mind, on the mind, and these impressions in turn form concepts and ideals, and they in turn are the plans from which the master architect will weave the future. The psychologists have come to the conclusion that this is but one sense, the sense of feeling, and that all other senses are but modifications of this one sense. This being true, we know why feeling is the very fountainhead of power, why the emotions so easily overcome the intellect, and why we must put feeling into our thought if we wish results. Thought and feeling is the irresistible combination. Visualization must, of course, be directed by the will. We are to visualize exactly what we want. We must be careful not to let the imagination run riot. Imagination is a good servant but a poor master, and unless it is controlled, it may easily lead us into all kinds of speculations and conclusions, which have no basis or foundation of fact whatever. Every kind of plausible opinion is liable to be accepted without any analytical examination, and the inevitable result is mental chaos. We must therefore construct only such mental images as are known to be scientifically true. Subject every idea to a searching analysis and accept nothing which is not scientifically exact. When you do this, you will attempt nothing but what you know you can carry out, and suches will crown your efforts. That is what businessmen call farsightedness. It is much the same as insight, and is one of the great secrets of success in all important undertakings. For your exercise this week, try to bring yourself to a realization of the important fact that harmony and happiness are states of consciousness and do not depend upon the possession of things. That things are effects and come as a consequence of correct mental states. So that if we desire material possession of any kind, our chief concern should be to acquire the mental attitude which will bring about the result desired. This mental attitude is brought about by a realization of our spiritual nature and our unity with the universal mind, which is the substance of all things. This realization will bring about everything which is necessary for our complete enjoyment. This is scientific or correct thinking. When we succeed in bringing about this mental attitude, it is comparatively easy to realize our desire as an already accomplished fact. When we can do this, we shall have found the truth which makes us free from every lack or limitation of any kind. A man may frame and let loose a star to roll in its orbit, and yet not have done so memorable a thing before God as he who lets a golden orbit thought to roll through the generation of time. Beecher. Was reading the seventh sentence. Part 17, and now I go to put my cheeks inside. Amorosetta. Here I am. Okay. Ready. The kind of deity which a man, consciously or unconsciously, worship indicates the intellectual status of the worshipper. Ask the Indian of God, and he will describe to you a powerful chieftain of a glorious tribe. Ask the Bhagan of God, and he will tell you of a god of fire, a god of water, a god of this, that, and the other. Ask the Israelite of God, and he will tell you of the God of Moses, who conceived it expedient to rule by coercive measures, hence the Ten Commandments, or of Joshua, who led the Israelites into battle, confiscated property, murdered the prisoners, and laid waste to cities. The so-called Ethan made graven images of their gods when they were accustomed to worship, but among the most intelligent, at least, these images were but the visible fulcrums with which they were enabled to mentally concentrate on the qualities which they desired to externalize in their lives. We of the 20th century worship a God of love in theory, but in practice we make for ourselves graven images of wealth, power, fashion, custom, and conventionality. We fall down before them and worship them. We concentrate on them, and they are thereby externalized in our lives. The student who masters the contents of part 17 will not mistake the symbols for the reality. He will be interested in causes rather than the effects. He will concentrate on the realities of life and will then not be disappointed in the results. Wait. All right. We are told that man has dominion over all things. The dominion is established through mind. Thought is the activity which controls every principle beneath it. The highest principle, by reason of its superior essence and qualities, necessarily determines the circumstances, aspects, and relation of everything with which it comes in contact. The vibrations of mental forces are the finest and consequently the most powerful in existence. To those who perceive the nature and transcendency of mental force, all physical power sinks into insignificance. We are accustomed to look upon the universe with a lens of five senses, and from these experiences our anthropomorphic conception originate, but true conceptions are only secured by spiritual insight. This insight requires a quickening of the vibrations of the mind, and is only secured when the mind is continuously concentrated in a given direction. Continuous concentration means an even, unbroken flow of thought and is the result of patience, persistent, persevering, and well-regulated system. Great discoveries are the result of long continued investigations. The science of mathematics requires years of concentrated effort to master it, and the greatest science, that of the mind, is revealed only through concentrated effort. Concentration is much misunderstood. There seems to be an idea of effort or activity associated with it, when just the contrary is necessary. The greatness of an actor lies in the fact that he forgets himself in the portrayal of his character, becoming so identified with it that the audience is swayed by the realism of the performance. This will give you a good idea of true concentration. You should be so interested in your thought, so engrossed in your subject, as to be conscious of nothing else. Such concentrations leads to intuitive perception and immediate insight into the nature of the object concentrated upon. All knowledge is the result of concentration of this kind. It is thus that the secrets of heaven and earth have been wrested. It is thus that the mind becomes a magnet and the desire to know draws the knowledge, irresistibly attracts it, makes it your own. Desire is largely subconscious. Conscious desire rarely realizes its object when the latter is out of immediate reach. Subconscious desire arouses the latent faculties of mind, and difficult problems seem to solve themselves. The subconscious mind may be aroused and brought into action in any direction and made to serve us for any purpose by concentration. The practice of concentration requires the control of the physical, mental, and physical being. All modes of consciousness, whether physical, mental, or mental, but must be under control. Spiritual truth is therefore the controlling factor. It is this which will enable you to grow out of limited attainment and reach a point where you will be able to translate modes of thought into character and consciousness. Concentration does not mean mere thinking of thoughts, but the transmutation of these thoughts into practical values. The average person has no conception of the meaning of concentration. There is always the cry to have, but never the cry to be. They fail to understand that they cannot have one without the other, that they must first find the kingdom before they can have the things added. Momentary enthusiasm is of no value. It is only with unbounded self-confidence that the goal is reached. The mind may place the ideal a little too high and fall short on the mark. It may attempt to soar or on untrained wings and instead of flying fall to earth, but that is no reason for not making another attempt. Weakness is the only barrier to mental attainment. Attribute your weakness to physical limitation or mental uncertainties and try again. Ease and perfection are gained by repetition. The astronomer centers his mind on the stars, and they give forth their secrets. The geologist centers his mind on the construction of the earth, and we have geology. So with all things, men center their minds on the problems of life, and the result is apparent in the vast and complex social order of the day. But now I rest a second. Ready. All mental discovery and attainment are the result of desire plus concentration. Desire is the strongest mode of action. The more persistent the desire, the more authoritative the revelation. Desire added to concentration will branch any secret from nature. In realizing great thoughts, in experiencing great emotions that correspond with great thoughts, the mind is in a state where it appreciates the value of higher things. The intensity of one moment's earnest concentration and the intense longing to become and to attain may take you further than years of slow, normal, and forced effort. It will unfasten the prison bars of unbelief, weakness, impotence, and self belittlement, and you will come into a realization of the joy of overcoming. The spirit of initiative and originality is developed through persistence and continuity of mental effort. Business teaches the value of concentration and encourages the decision of character. It develops practical insight and quickness of conclusion. The mental element in every commercial pursuit is dominant as the controlling factor, and desire is the predominating force. All commercial relations are the externalization of desire. Many of the sturdy and substantial virtues are developed in commercial employment. The mind is steadied and directed, it becomes efficient. The principal necessity is the strengthening of the mind so that it rises superior to the distractions and wayward impulses of instinctive life, and thus successfully overcomes in the conflict between the higher and lower self. All of us are dynamos, but the dynamo of itself is nothing. Of itself is nothing. The mind must work the dynamo. Then it is useful and its energy can be definitely concentrated. The mind is an engine whose power is undreamed. Thought is an omni-working power. It is the ruler and creator of all form and all events occurring in form. Physical energy is nothing in comparison with the omnipotence of thought, because thought enables man to harness all other natural power. Vibration is the action of thought. It is vibration which reaches out and attracts the material necessary to construct and build. There is nothing mysterious concerning the power of thought. Concentration simply implies that consciousness can be focalized to the point where it becomes identified with the object of its attention. As food absorbed is the essence of the body, so the mind absorbs the object of its attention, gives it life and being. If you concentrate on some matter of importance, the intuitive power will be set in operation, and help will come in the nature of information which will lead to success. Intuition arrives at conclusion without the aid of experience or memory. Intuition often solves problems that are beyond the grasp of the reasoning power. Intuition often comes with a suddenness that is startling. It reveals the truth for which we are searching, so directly that it seems to come from a higher power. Intuition can be cultivated and developed. In order to do this, it must be recognized and appreciated. If the intuitive visitor is given a royal welcome when he comes, he will come again. The more cordial the welcome, the more frequent his visits will become. But if he is ignored or neglected, he will make his visits few and far apart. Intuition usually comes in the silence. Great minds seek solitude frequently. It is here that all the larger problems of life are worked out. For this reason, every businessman who can afford it has a private office where he will not be disturbed. If you cannot afford a private office, you can at least find somewhere where you can be alone a few minutes each day to train the thought along lines which will enable you to develop that invincible power which is necessary to achieve. Remember that fundamentally the subconscious is omnipotent. There is no limit to the things that can be done when it is given the power to act. Your degree of success is determined by the nature of your desire. If the nature of your desire is in harmony with natural law or the universal mind, it will gradually emancipate the mind and give you invincible courage. Every obstacle conquered, every victory gained, will give you more faith in your power, and you will have greater ability to win. Your strength is determined by your mental attitude. If this attitude is one of success and is permanently held with an unswerving purpose, you will attract to you from the invisible domain the things you silently demand. By keeping the thought in mind, you will gradually take tangible form. A definite purpose sets causes in motion which go out in the invisible world and find the material necessary to serve your purpose. You may be pursuing the symbols of power instead of power itself. You may be pursuing fame instead of honor, riches instead of wealth, position instead of servitude. This I don't think it. In either event, you will find that they turn to ashes just as you overtake them. Premature wealth or position cannot be retained because it has not been earned. We get only what we give, and those who try to get without giving always find that the law of compensation is relentlessly bringing about an exact equilibrium. The rays are usually being for money and other mere symbols of power, but with an understanding of the true source of power, we can afford to ignore the symbols. The man with a large bank account finds it unnecessary to load his pockets down with gold. So with the man who has found the true source of power, he is no longer interested in shams or pretensions. Thought ordinarily leads outwardly. Allora, thought ordinarily leads outwardly in evolutionary directions, but it can be turned within where we take hold of the basic principles of things. The heart of things, the spirit of things. When you get to the heart of things, it is comparatively easy to understand and command them. This is because the spirit of a thing is the thing itself, the vital part of it, the real substance. The form is simply the outward manifestation of the spiritual activity within. For your exercise this week, concentrate as nearly as possible in accordance with the method outlined in this lesson. Let there be no conscious effort or activity associated with your purpose. Relax completely, avoid any thought of anxiety as to the result. Remember that power comes through repose. Let the thought dwell upon your object until it is completely identified with it, until you are conscious of nothing else. If you wish to eliminate fear, concentrate on courage. If you wish to eliminate lack, concentrate on abundance. If you wish to eliminate disease, concentrate on health. Always concentrate on the ideal as an already existing fact. This is the germ cell, the life principle which casts forth and sets in motion those causes which guide, direct, and bring about the necessary relation, which eventually manifest in form. Thought is the property of those only who can entertain it. Pausa. We are part 18. We have not let really so much, like about 20 pages. Fili, amore, vieni? Vieni qui con me? Fili, amore, vieni, vieni con me. Vieni cucina. Vieni, passa sopra. Aspetta, amore. But pause. are ready. Part 18. In order to grow, we must obtain what is necessary for our growth. This is brought about through the law of attraction. This principle is the sole means by which the individual is differentiated from the universal. Think for a moment, what would the man be if he were not a husband, father, or brother, if he were not interested in the social, economical, political, or religious world? He would be nothing but an abstract theoretical ego. He exists, therefore, only in his relation to the world, in his relation to other men, in his relation to society. This relation constitutes his environment, and in no other way. It is evident, therefore, that the individual is simply the differentiation of the one universal mind, which lightened every man that comes into the world. And his so-called individuality or personality consists of nothing but the manner in which he relates with the world. This we call his environment and is brought about by the law of attraction. Part 18, which follows, has something more to say concerning this important law. There is a change in the thought of the world. This change is silently transpiring in our midst, and is more important than any which the world has undergone since the downfall of paganism. This present revolution, in the opinions of all classes of men, the highest and most cultured of men, as well as those of the laboring class, stands unparalleled in the history of the world. Science has of late made such vast discoveries, has revealed such an infinity of resources, has unveiled such enormous possibilities and such unsuspected forces that scientific men more and more hesitate to affirm certain theories as established and beyond doubt, or to deny other theories as absurd or impossible. A new civilization is being born. Customs, creeds, and precedent are passing. Vision, faith, and service are taking their place. The fetters of tradition are being melted off from humanity. And as the impurities of materialism are being consumed, thought is being liberated and truth is rising full robed before an astonished multitude. The whole world is on the eve of a new consciousness, a new power, and a new realization within the self. Physical science has resolved matter into molecules, molecules into atoms, atoms into energy, and it has remained for Mr. Fleming, in an address before the Royal Institution, to resolve this energy into mind. He says, in its ultimate essence, energy may be incomprehensible by us except as an exhibition of the direct operation of that which we call mind or will. Second. And this mind is the indwelling and ultimate. It is immanent in matter as in spirit. It is the sustaining, energizing, all-pervading spirit of the universe. Every living thing must be sustained by this omnipotent intelligence, and we find the difference in individual lives to be largely measured by the degree of this intelligence, which they manifest. It is greater intelligence that places the animal in a higher scale of being than the plant, the man higher than the animal, and we find that this increased intelligence is again indicated by the power of the individual to control modes of action and thus to consciously adjust himself to his environment. It is this adjustment that occupies the attention of the greatest minds, and this adjustment consists in nothing else than the recognition of an existing order in the universal mind, for it is well known that this mind will obey us precisely in proportion as we first obey it. It is the recognition of natural laws that has enabled us to annihilate time and space, to soar in the air, and to make iron float. And the greater the degree of intelligence, the greater will be our recognition of these natural laws, and the greater will be the power we can possess. It is the recognition of the self as an individualization of this universal intelligence that enables the individual to control those forms of intelligence which have not yet reached this level of self recognition. They do not know that this universal intelligence permeates all things ready to be called into action. They do not know that it is responsive to every demand, and they are therefore in bondage to the law of their own being. Thought is creative, and the principle on which the law is based is sound and legitimate and is inherent in the nature of things. But this creative power does not originate in the individual, but in the universal, which is the source and foundation of all energy and substance. The individual is simply the channel for the distribution of this energy. The individual is simply the means by which the universal produces the various combinations, which result is the formation of phenomena, which depends upon the law of vibration, whereby various rates of rapidity of motion in the primary substance form new substances all in certain exact numerical ratios. Thought is the invisible link by which the individual comes into communication with the universal, the finite with the infinite, the seen with the unseen. Thought is the magic by which the human is transformed into a being who thinks and knows and feels and acts. As the proper apparatus has enabled the eye to discover words without number millions of miles away, so with the proper understanding, man has been enabled to communicate with the universal mind, the source of all power. The understanding, which is usually developed, is nothing more than a belief, which means nothing at all. The savages of the cannibal islands believe something, but that proves nothing. The only belief which is of any value to anyone is a belief that has been put to a test and demonstrated to be a fact. It is then no longer a belief, but has becoming a living faith or truth. And this truth has been put to the test by hundreds of thousands of people and has been found to be the truth exactly in proportion to the usefulness of the apparatus which they used. A man will not expect to locate stars hundreds of millions of miles away without a sufficiently strong telescope, and for this reason science is continually engaged in building larger and more powerful telescopes, and is continually rewarded by additional knowledge of the heavenly bodies. So with understanding, men are continually making progress in the methods which they use to come into communication with the universal mind and its infinite possibilities. The universal mind manifests itself in the objective, through the principle of attraction that each atom has for every other atom, in infinite degrees of intensity. It is by this principle of combining and attracting that things are brought together. This principle is of universal application and is the sole means whereby the purpose of existence is carried into effect. The expression of growth is met in a most beautiful manner through the instrumentality of this universal principle. In order to grow, we must obtain what is essential for our growth, but as we are at all times a complete thought entity, this completeness makes it possible for us to receive only as we give. Growth is therefore conditioned on reciprocal action, and we find that on the mental plane, like attracts like, the mental vibrations respond only to the extent of their vibratory harmony. It is clear, therefore, that thoughts of abundance will respond only to similar thoughts. The wealth of the individual is seen to be what he inherently is. Affluence within is found to be the secret of attraction, for affluence without. The ability to produce is found to be the real source of wealth of the individual. It is for this reason that he who has his heart in his work is certain to meet with unbounded success. He will give and continually give, and the more he gives, the more he will receive. What do the great financiers of Wall Street, the captains of industry, the statesmen, The great corporation attorneys, the inventors, physicians, authors, what do each of these contribute to the sum of human happiness but the power of their thought? Thought is the energy which the law of attraction is brought into operation, which eventually manifests in abundance. The universal mind is static mind or substance in equilibrium. It is differentiated into form by our power to think. Thought is the dynamic phase of mind. Power depends upon consciousness of power. Unless we use it, we shall lose it. And unless we are conscious of it, we cannot use it. The use of this power depends upon attention. The degree of attention determines our capacity for the acquirement of knowledge, which is another name for power. Attention has been held to be distinguished mark of genius. The cultivation of attention depends upon practice. The incentive of attention is interest. The greater the interest, the greater the attention. The greater the attention, the greater the interest. Action and reaction. Begin by paying attention. Before long, you will have aroused interest. This interest will attract more attention, and this attention will produce more interest, and so on. This practice will enable you to cultivate the power of attention. This week, concentrate upon your power to create. Seek insight, perception. Try to find a logical basis for the faith which is in you. Let the talk dwell on the fact that the physical man lives and moves and has his being in the sustainer of all organic life, air, that he must breathe to live. Then let the talk rest on the fact that the spiritual man also lives and moves and has his being in a similar but subtle energy upon which he must depend for life, and that, as in the physical world, no life assumes form until after a seed is sown, and no higher fruit than that of the parent stock can be produced. So in the spiritual world, no effect can be produced until the seed is sown, and the fruit will depend upon the nature of the seed, so that the results which you secure depend upon your perception of law in the mighty domain of causation. The highest evolution of human consciousness. There is no thought in my mind, but it quickly tends to convert itself into a power and organize a huge instrumentality of means. Emerson. And now I will make a pause, and maybe in an hour or so I come back and I want to finish this book. We have just left 20 pages.